Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Drunk Knitting. I'm here once again with Kyle Cassidy, and we have a few different things that Kyle's been working on lately, but at the moment, he is working on a hat.
I am.
He's working on it's a pattern I did years and years and years ago for the band Paramore released a video. The lead singer had that hat. I immediately had to have it, made a pattern, and Kyle's knitting it.
So, did you just figure out how to make this hat by looking at the video?
Yeah.
And how long did it take you to do that?
I mean, maybe a day or two.
Did you just start knitting or did you draw stuff first?
I just started knitting it. Like I just started freezing the video and knitting it because I really, really wanted that hat. And then I put the pattern out as quickly as I could because other people like on Ravelry that I was talking to also wanted that hat. So it was just like a race to just get it up there as quickly as I could.
So is that how you get famous on Ravelry? Like the first out of the gate with a hat that looks like the one in the thing?
Pretty much.
So I'm starting to understand this now because Trillian and I have been watching The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, which is awesome. And I find myself like partially, and I'm watching the show out of one eye. And then I'm like, Mr. Schreibel has a really cool sweater. I wonder if there's a pattern for that sweater, and then in the episode we watched last night, she's got a hat, like a hat. And I'm like, I could knit that hat. I bet I could knit that hat. Where can I find a pattern for that hat? So like while we're supposed to be watching the show, I'm Googling, Queen's Gambit hat. I didn't find anything. If anybody out there knows how to make it. But I understand this now.
Yeah, you got to check like Instagram, Ravelry, and Twitter, and people will post if they've made it.
And it doesn't take long. Like you did this hat in like days, you said?
Yeah. Yeah, something simple like that wouldn't take long. A sweater might be a little more involved. There was an episode of Doctor Who in the Peter Capaldi season where he had these gloves, and like the next day I had a pattern for the gloves up because they were so cool.
And did you have the first Jane hat?
No, there were lots of Jane hats when I started.
Okay. Can you tell the story of the Jane hat?
We were watching Firefly, and hang on, I've got a cat and a parrot situation here.
Uh-oh.
There's a parrot and a cat. It's not good.
Who wins in that fight?
Nobody, because the parrot will bite the cat will claw the parrot. No good. I'll take it. Yeah, so we were watching Firefly. It was long after it had actually been canceled. We had the DVD and we were watching it with some friends. And the second that hat was on screen, my husband looked at me and he was like, I want that hat. So the next day he took me to the yarn store, he bought the yarn, and I made the hat for him.
And the hat's a joke hat, right? Jane's mom makes it for him and it's terrible.
I mean, it's a matter of opinion.
But anyway, go ahead.
No, it's funny because like knitters, we want to see knits on screen. And that's like, if you're in television or movies and you want something talked about with at least like, this group, put something knit up there, like hand knit, and it'll be all over the internet, all over the forums. Everybody will be talking about it. Coraline, the movie Coraline, did a great job with that. Like they had so many hand knits in Coraline.
And Outlander too has a whole subculture based around.
Yeah. And actually with Coraline, they included the sweater pattern for her star sweater as part of the promotional materials.
What?
There was like a secret place. You had to know how to get there on the website. And there was like these secret buttons you would click and it would give you the sweater pattern.
Some people get it.
All right. So how have you been going with this hat, Kyle?
So I've been going pretty well with this hat. I'm impressed with myself. Every once in a while, I forget something. So, these cables, there are a lot of cables in this hat. And I was tooling along pretty well with the cables. I'll hold them up here. But then somewhere along the line, I forgot to do one of them. So like right there's a missing cable and it looks terrible because all the rest of them, are kind of there. some more successful than others. I don't know how some of this stuff happened, but I realized while doing the cables that what I could do is put a stitch marker in front of every time that the cable's supposed to start. And so I did that. And once I did that, I didn't miss a cable anymore because I knew it's like, oh, cable's starting, I should check. And then you made me get that row counter ring, and I hung the row counter ring on the very first beginning of the row. So every time I get to the row counter ring, I can't forget. If it was on my finger, I could forget. But since it's hanging there on a stitch marker, so once I did those things, I didn't forget anything else again, and it's going along pretty well. Some of my bobbles, the bobbles are a little confusing, even when I figured out like what they were supposed to be doing. Sometimes it just didn't do exactly what it was supposed to do. So there's ones like this that are a little messed up. And is it wrong to tack them in afterwards with a little piece of yarn and a needle?
Nothing's wrong,
All
you
right,
know.
because they might need a little extra help. But other than that, the hat's going along pretty good.
That's great. And you know, it's a slouchy hat. So with that messy cable, just like slouch it over the missing cable.
So I was wondering if there's like a thing that I could knit and sew onto there, like a flower or a dragonfly or a bug or
Oh yeah. There'll be,
something.
if you were to search like knit or crochet flower, you would find hundreds of patterns for them. But even like some yarn shops sell little kits for how to make your own, or you could felt one, like with needle felting, which is fun.
So much stuff. All right, so I'm on my decrease row, which I don't really necessarily know how to do. So,
Okay. Refresh my memory. What's the pattern? Which decrease does the pattern say to use?
I believe that it's knit two together.
Easy. So knit two together.
K-Tog.
K-Tog, yes.
It's just the name of my new band.
Knit two together is literally you're going to knit two stitches together. So with your right hand needle.
Am I going to do this anywhere? Am I going to do this somewhere in the middle of the row? Am I going to do this?
Where does the pattern tell you to do it?
Now I'm supposed to follow the pattern? Hold on a second here. And I'll read the magic pattern words to you.
Okay. Simmer down. Sit down.
So why don't you tell us about Widget?
Widget is a little parrot that we rescued ages and ages ago. See it right there. Hi, Widget.
Hi, Widget.
She was in a hoarding situation and then went to a rescue group, and then we got her from there. And she's kind of grumpy and pissy like all parrots are, but she's pretty sweet. We like her.
And how long will she live?
Like 80 years.
Whoa. So this is your daughter's parrot now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping that like they really bond.
And Widget was once tweeted by Sir Mix-a-Lot, right?
She was, because she was dancing to Baby Got Back. Because she likes to dance. She does this little shuffle. You gonna talk? No. Just bite my rings. Whenever we have a party, we put up a sign that says, "Do not touch the bird. She will bite you." And I had a friend one time at one of our parties come up to me with a bloody finger, was like, "Widget bit me." And I was like, "Did you touch her?" And she said, "Yes." And then about 20 minutes later, she came up and goes, "She bit me again." I'm like, "Quit touching her."
Yeah, the more you drink, the more you think that bird has come around and likes you.
Nope.
Like, ah, Widget likes me now. It's never true. All right, here we go. Repeat those 6 rows while working on bobbles on the purl section until you have worked 7 cables, which I just did. Next row, purl 10, P2 tog, K6, P2 tog, P10.
Okay, so you're gonna purl 2 together.
All right. And I do that. Where do I do that? Like all the time, or?
You do that. So you're doing it right before the cables.
Okay.
So you should. Do you have like 2 purl stitches before each cable?
I have a whole bunch of purl stitches before each.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right.
I have like 20.
Yeah.
So can I do it anywhere in the row, or should I do it right before?
Okay, so you're gonna purl 10 and then purl 2 together.
All right. 1, 2,
Put your head up. Let them see you.
3.
It's like a little doo-doo, doo-doo. Boop. Boop.
So this one feels particularly stretchy. Is that because of my yarn, or am I sloppy in my stitching? There's a lot of play in these.
Yeah, I mean, could be your gauge, your yarn, it could be anything.
Okay.
And it is designed to be like a slouchy, floppy hat.
All right.
So,
Slipping it under 2 stitches.
mhm. It will feel a little funky.
Felt a little hard to turn that. All right, sliding it off.
Yep.
It
You've
has
decreased.
slid off. And now I'm gonna knit 6.
Boop. Parrot TV.
Okay, knit 6, and then I PQ tog again.
Mm-hmm. And purl 2 together is exactly like it says on the box. You literally just purl 2 stitches together.
And it seemed to go over
Mm-hmm.
without a hitch.
Purl 2 together and knit 2 together are the easiest decreases.
Okay. And so now I was very pleased in doing this hat when I got to the place where I was supposed to do my last set of cables, and there weren't enough stitches, so I just added one because I learned how to do that. So I'm very pleased with myself now that I can sort of change the number of stitches in a row by magic.
Yes, you have learned your increases. Now you've learned your decreases. 2 of the things you need to learn for your Lopopedia.
So I need to pay less attention to counting now because I can just put in stitches if I need them more.
Maybe not so much that, but you can tell with this pattern that basically once you hit 2 stitches in front of a cable, that's where you're going to do your decrease.
Okay. So one of the things that I really liked about doing this hat is that it didn't require a lot of attention to a pattern. Although it looks complicated, you don't need to be counting the stitches. You just need to know where the last one started. And
yeah.
That way. So with a series of stitch markers, I was able to just mindlessly knit while listening to an audiobook. And then when I saw the stitch marker, I know I had to do that thing.
My favorite knitting is simple, mindless knitting. So when I do hats and things like that, I try to do things that, you can relax. Like to me, knitting's relaxing. So even when I have like lace patterns or complex parts, I try to put them in panels. So you still have these like strips of like doing nothing.
Okay. Oops.
Now, as you do your decreases, eventually you're going to need to switch to double pointed needles because that's not going to fit on your circulars anymore.
Okay. So I've used double pointed needles before in the making of the gloves. So how do I switch from these circulars to the double pointeds? Because when I did the double pointeds, I just cast on the double pointeds.
Right. It is actually very simple. So say you're on your circular needles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just as you start knitting, just pick up a double pointed, slide it in there and start knitting onto the double pointed and keep going around. And eventually all your stitches will be on your DPNs.
What?
Yeah. Again, sounds hard, very easy.
I'm learning that a lot of stuff with the needles, and I think I might have mentioned this before, that I'm learning from you, is that if it looks complicated, you can just ignore it. And just all you need to remember is that the next stitch goes from the left to the right. And if the circulars are kind of exactly the same as the straight needles that you first taught me with, and the double pointeds are kind of exactly the same as the straight needles that you first taught me with, it's just like there's a lot more of them and it looks confusing. But if you just remember the stitch goes from this needle to this needle, and you just ignore the fact that there's a whole bunch of other needles in your way, it seemed to work out, even though it looked confusing.
That's the thing with knitting. It looks very impressive unless you actually do it. And when you are a knitter, you're not as easily impressed by what other people are doing because you're like, they're just knitting on like 8 needles. That's totally easy.
I'm P2 togging here. Look at that go. Look at that go. And there's my stitch marker.
Wait till we teach you SSKing.
Oh my gosh. This whole secret language. So one of the things that I had always thought about wool was that it was always itchy. And I'm learning that's not necessarily the case.
No. And Lopapesia wool can feel itchy, but I mean, that's why you wear it with something under it. The test I always heard was to knit, like take your gauge swatch and just kind of put it on the back of your neck for a little while you're sitting and watching TV. And if it really, really bothers you, don't make a sweater out of it.
So I would like, and I don't know if this is sacrilege or not, to add a lining to my Lopi sweater, because when we were in Iceland previously, Trillian got me a Lopi sweater, and it is super itchy. It's also super hot. It's never been actually cold enough for me to wear it.
So, I mean, I wouldn't do a liner just because that would be a pain. I would just wear something under it.
Okay. I did get a couple turtleneck base layers. Nice to wear under my Lofi sweater. I just thought it was clever to build something in. Was that Widget?
That was Widget. She asked if she said, "You ready?"
And what are you asking her about when you ask her if she's ready?
To step up.
Oh.
So I say, "You ready?" Right.
What does she say?
She pretty much just says, "You ready? Hello." And she says a few things actually. She asks if you're all right. Like if she hears a crash in the house or something, she'll be like, "You all right?"
Does that happen more now that you have a toddler in the house?
I'd say it's about the same. We're clumsy people. We were, Chrissy Scalzi was over here one time helping me paint my bedroom. And because she's amazing, when you say, "Hey, I need to peel off 20-year-old wallpaper and paint a bedroom," she'll be like, "I'll be there." So she came out, helped me paint my bedroom in like a weekend. And at one point, like hit her thumb with a hammer and just let out a string of curse words. And from the next room, Widget went, after a pause, she was like, "You all right?" It was a good time.
Just keep doing this, right? Until I run out of space on my double pointed needles.
You probably have a row in between.
Okay.
So you'll work multiple decrease rows. Right? Yeah, come here. Get down. Again, I should have had the pattern up before I started talking to you, but I'm guessing you're going to have a row in between where you just work as normal.
Okay.
And then you'll probably have another decrease row, and the decreases will change on each row. And then at the end, you'll probably just be purling two together until you have a couple stitches, thread a tapestry needle through it, and you'll be done.
All right. This hat took a surprisingly long time. I think I've been working on it for maybe 2 weeks now.
It's a big hat, and the original pattern, I think, is bulky yarn. You're probably not using super bulky.
I am not using super bulky. I'm using kind of ordinary worsted yarn.
Yeah, so that makes a difference.
And I got a set of the needles that Amy had mentioned in the last episode. I got the Haya Sharps, not the interchangeables. These are just the circulars, 16-inch circulars.
And are you noticing a difference?
They're definitely sharper, but I am not to the point yet where I prefer them to the $2 needles that came from China that I got. I don't have that refinement yet of my technique to be able to tell what they're doing better, other than being very sharp. They are definitely much sharper.
In a year, I'm going to play that little clip back to you.
Yeah, I'll be like, how did I use those things? It's like trying to knit with a log. I've noticed that, some of my stuff is definitely getting better. And everything that I knit now, I'm like, this is going to be the one that I knit with no mistakes. And it's never like that. No, there's never anything without mistakes. So there's still stuff that I'm messing up. And I thought I'd be better at that. But the more complicated stuff that I'm doing is better. And when I knit a new thing, I can see how it's better than the last thing I knitted. That's for sure.
That's good. Well, all right, Kyle, let's just have you keep working those decreases.
All right.
And then eventually you're going to finish that hat and show us all.
Yeah,
Looks
I'll
like.
be wearing it in a couple weeks.
All right, so you've learned another thing off your checklist.
Right, the P2 tog, which I'm sure now I can understand K2 tog too, because that was pretty darn easy to do.
Yeah. All right, then we will see you next time. Keep drinking, keep knitting. Cheers.
Thanks for hanging out, everybody.